Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am discuss with you polity of India. In this topic we will discuss about you historical background of Indian Constitution. The British came to India in 1600 as traders in the form of East India Company, which had the exclusive right of trading in India under a charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I. The British India came to इंडिया में वापिस आए 1600 में एज ए ट्रेडर के रूप में इन द फॉर्म ऑफ ईस्ट इंडिया company which has the exclusive right of trading in India under a charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I. In 1765, the company, which till now had purely trading functions, obtained the Diwani, is that rights over revenue and civil justice of Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. This started its career as a territorial power in 1858. In the wake of the Spoil Mutiny, the British Crown assumed direct responsibility for the governance of India. This rule continued until India was granted independence on August 15, 1947. With independence came the need of constitution as suggested by M.N. Roy, a pioneer of communist movement in India. In 1934, a constituent assembly was formed for this purpose in 1946, and on January 26, 1950, the constitution came into being. However, various features of Indian constitution and polity have their roots in British rule. There are certain events in the British rule that laid down the legal framework for the organization and functioning of government and administration in British India. These events have greatly influenced our constitution and polity. They are explained here in a chronological order. The Company Rule 1773 to 1858. This is also known as Regulating Act of 1773. This act is of great constitutional importance as it was the first step taken by British government in to control and regulate the affair of East India Company in India. Next is it recognized for the first time the political and administrative function of the company, and it laid the foundation of central administration in India. Features of the company rule: the Regulating Act of 1773. It designated the government of Bengal as the Governor General of Bengal and created an executive council of 4 members to assist him. The first such Governor General was Lord Warren Hastings. It made the governors of Bombay and Madras presidencies subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Unlike earlier when the three presidencies were independent of one another. It provided for the establishment of a Supreme Court at Kolkata 1774, comprising one Chief Justice and three other judges. It prohibited the servants of the company from engaging in any private trade or accepting presents or bribes from the natives. It strengthened the control of the British government over the company while requiring the court of directors, governing body of the company, to report on its revenue, civil and military affairs in India. The next one is Pitt's India Act of 1784. In a bid to rectify the defeat of the Regulating Act of 1773, the British Parliament passed the Amending Act of 1781, also known as the Act of Settlement. The next important act was the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Features of the Act. It distinguished between the commercial and political function of the country. इस फीचर्स में डिस्टिंक्ट किया था कमर्शियल और पॉलिटिकल फंक्शन किसका, कंपनी का. इट अलाउड द कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स टू मैनेज द कमर्शियल अफेयर्स बट created a new body called Board of Control to manage the political affairs. Thus, it established a system of double government. It empowered the Board of Control to supervise and direct all operations of the civil and military government or revenues of the British possessions in India. Thus, the Act was signed for two reasons. First, the company's territories in India were for the first time called the British possession in India. And the second, the British government was given the supreme control over company's affairs and its administration in India. Charter Act 8 of 1833. This act was the final step towards centralization in British India. Features of the Act. The features of the Charter Act was it made the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India and vested in him all civil and military powers. Thus, the Act created for the first time a Governor of India having authority over the entire territorial area possessed by the British in India. Lord William Vantic was the first Governor General of India. It deprived the Governor of Bombay and Madras of their legislative powers. The Governor General of India was given exclusive legislative powers for the entire British India. The law made under the previous act were called as regulations, while law made under this act were called as acts. It ends the activities of the East India Company as a commercial body. It provided the company's territories in India were held by it in trust for His Majesty, his heirs and successors. Charter Act 1853. This was the last series of Charter Act passed by British Parliament between 1793 and 1853. It was significant constitutional landmark. Features of the Act. It separated for the first time the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General's Council. It provided for addition of six new members called legislative councillors to the council. In other words, it established a separate Governor General Legislative Councils, which came to be known as the Indian Legislative Council. The legislative wing of the council functioned as a mini parliament, adopting the same procedure as the British Parliament. Thus, legislation for the first time was treated as a special function of the government, requiring special machinery and special process. It introduced an open competition system of selection and recruitment of civil servants. The Convenator Civil Services was thus thrown open the Indian also. Accordingly, the Macleod Committee, the Committee on the Indian Civil Service, was appointed in 1854. It extended the company's rule and allowed it to retain the possession of Indian territories on trust for the British Crown, but it did not specify any particular period, unlike the previous charters. This was a clear indication that the company rule would determinated at any time the parliament liked. It introduced for the first time local representation in the Indian Central Legislative Council. Of the six new legislative members of the Governor General's councils, four members were appointed by the local provincial governments of Madras, Bombay, Bengal, and Agra. The next one is Crown Rule 1858 to 1947. Government of India Act of 1858. This significant act was enacted in the wake of revolt of 1857, also known as the First War Independence or the Sepoy Mutiny. The act known as the Act for the Good Government of India abolished the East India Company and transferred the power of government, territories, and revenues to the British Crown. Features of the Act. It provided that India henceforth was to be governed by and in the name of Her Majesty. It changed the designator of Governor General of India to that of Viceroy of India. He was the direct representative of the British Crown in India, Lord Canning. Thus, became the first Viceroy of India. It extended and it ended the system of double government by abolishing the Board of Control and Court of Directors. It created a new office, Secretary of State for India, vested with complete authority and control over Indian administration. The Secretary of State was a member of the British cabinet and was responsible ultimately to the British Parliament. It is established a 15 members Council of India to assist the Secretary of State for India. The council was an advisory body. The Secretary of State was made the chairman of the council. It constituted the Secretary of State in council as a body corporate capable of suing and being sued in India and in England. The Act of 1858 was, however, largely confined to the improvement of the administrative machinery by which the Indian government was to be supervised and controlled in England. It did not alter in any substantial way the system of government that prevailed in India. The next one is Indian Council Act of 1861, 1892 and 1909. After the Great Revolt of 1857, the British government felt the necessity of seeking the cooperation of the Indians in the administration of their country. In pursuance of this policy of association, three acts were enacted by the British Parliament in 1861, 1892 and 1909. The Indian Council Act of 1861 is an important landmark in the constitutional and political history of India. Features of the Act 1861. It made a beginning of representative institutions by associating Indians with the law making process. It thus provided that the Viceroy should nominate some Indian as non-official members of his expanded council. In 1862, Lord Canning, the then Viceroy, nominated three Indians to his legislative council: the Raja of Banaras, the Maharaja of Patiala, and Sir Dinkar Roy. It initiated the process of decentralization while restoring the legislative power to the Bombay and Madras presidencies, and thus reversed the centralizing tendency that started from the Regulating Act of 1773 and reached its climax under the Charter Act of 1833. This policy of legislative devaluation resulted in the grant of almost complete internal autonomy to the provinces in 1937. It also provided for the establishment of new legislative council for Bengal, North Western provinces and Punjab. which were established in 1862, 1886 and 1897 respectively. It empowered the viceroy to make rules and orders for the more convenient transactions of business in the council. It also gave a recognition to the portfolio system introduced by Lord Canning in 1859. Under this, a member of the Viceroy Council was made in charge of one or more departments of the government and was authorized to issue final order on behalf of the council on matter of his departments. It empowered the viceroys to issue ordinances without the concurrence of legislative council during the emergency. The life of such an ordinance was 6 months. Thanks for watching.